What's up, guys? Welcome back to BlockHash Exploring the Blockchain, episode 260. Today, we have the CTO, Hart Montgomery of Hyperledger on the show with us to talk about the foundation and what they're doing. Hart, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks a lot for having me, Brandon.
Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate you taking the time. It's an honor to have you on. Before we kind of jump into it and talk a bit more about the foundation and kind of recap it, and then discuss what you guys are doing lately, tell us a bit more about yourself and your backstory. How did you find yourself in this space? What did you do prior, from a work perspective, and what was your path that got you to Hyperledger?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I really got into cryptography in grad school. So I went straight from undergrad to a PhD program in computer science without sort of really knowing what I wanted to do. And I got to Stanford and I talked to my future PhD advisor, Dan Bonet, and just, like most people who talk to Dan, got really excited by cryptography and what he was doing. And so that's how I got into cryptography. I sort of have an academic background that way. After I finished grad school, I went to work for Fujitsu Research, where I worked on, cryptographic research, a lot of things in cryptography, and in particular, open source blockchain and cryptography. And as you're probably familiar, blockchain is one of the most practical ways to work on cryptography. If you're doing cryptographic research and you want to have an impact in the real world, blockchain is one of the best ways to do that. So that's sort of how I got into blockchain. And actually, Fujitsu was one of the founding premier members of Hyperledger. So when Fujitsu started Hyperledger, I started working on Hyperledger, and I've sort of been on all of the technical steering committees since the beginning, and have been involved in that from its inception. And then very recently, Hyperledger decided to open up this role, and I thought it would be a great opportunity to sort of work more directly on open source blockchain. And so I jumped at the chance, and here I am. So that's a little bit of my backstory.
Nice, man. Was there anything in particular about Hyperledger that was most attractive to you that you wanted to maybe work with the foundation versus elsewhere?
Yeah, I really love the full open source development environment, right? So, there's a continuum of sort of open source projects, right? Some projects will say they're open source, but they mean is, they dump code periodically, and maybe one company has a complete monopoly on where the code base goes. Hyperledger is a full open development model, right? And this is true for anything at the Linux Foundation, not just Hyperledger. But what it means is that technical decisions and sort of technical positions are all decided based on merit and not company affiliation. Anyone can join, anyone can contribute, anyone can do whatever they want technically. And I really find that attractive. And I think in an application like blockchain, where decentralization is so important, it's also important to have a maximally decentralized development process. So that really attracted me to Hyperledger and the Linux Foundation.
What's your role, you'd say, entail the most as CTO for the foundation? Like, what's it like, a day in the life CTO of the Hyperledger Foundation?
That's a great question. And sometimes I don't even know myself. The days are so different. I obviously have to understand the technology. So I certainly spend time, making sure I understand everything, following the papers, keeping up on all the current trends. Then it's sort of looking over our projects, talking to people, making sure we're headed in the right direction, making sure we're not duplicating anything, right, unnecessarily. I've spent a lot of time recently, on sort of security practices, which are everyone, I think, agrees at this point that open source, has superior security to closed source in terms of environments. But putting in practices and getting people who aren't used to open source security practices, it's a challenge, and that's something where we work on constantly. So, I also explain things to people who are looking to use Hyperledger. So no day for me is ever like any other day, I guess.
No, it sounds like you have a very diverse role in what you do there and cover a lot of things, which is good. That's great. Because you get your kind of fingers in a bunch of different areas and understand everything really well, I imagine. What would you say that direction is that you're trying to help drive Hyperledger in?
There are a lot of different directions, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, we want to be as sort of diverse and distributed as possible. We want, lots of different, we're always trying to increase, diversity of contributions from different companies, different areas of the world. So we want to grow projects that way. We want to see, obviously more interoperability and integration. Uh, Everything has to work together and talk to each other. Sort of nothing, is ever going to be in a vacuum. We want people to be able to reuse components from different projects. Uh, you know, so we also want very traditional enterprises like central banks and traditional banks to have confidence in our security processes and realize that, hey, we can trust blockchain open source software. So we're pushing in a lot of different directions. There's no one priority that we're just sort of climbing up the mountain on. We want to move, towards a lot of things that will help people adopt open and use open source blockchain.
Would you say most of these things are tailored towards the corporate enterprise space, or is it kind of mixed and you got a lot of government interest or you got financial industry interest, or where do you see like the most interest?
It's mixed all over the place. Like for our identity projects, we have a ton of government interest, and we actually have, full-time maintainers on our identity projects who are government employees, which I think is really, really cool. So the interest is really driven by the project space, I would say. And we're not just, we're not just interested in enterprises. We like to call our software enterprise grade. And that sort of means that, we've put enough thought and due diligence that enterprises can trust it. But that doesn't mean it's only for enterprises, right? There are lots of non-enterprise use cases that we see people using all the time.
Absolutely. I mean, enterprise is one facet of what you guys can like drive the foundation towards, but there's so many different things out there, so many different industries that need blockchain, that need open source tech and DLT and all this. Um, what are some of the projects or things you guys are working on under the umbrella that you guys maybe are most excited about, or that have had the most development or the most interest?
Well, we have our classic workhorse projects that are, people are very interested in, like Fabric and Besu,
Mhm.
and those are continuing to progress. We're seeing a lot of excitement around Besu, around the merge. Um, but I figured that most people who are familiar with Hyperledger are familiar and comfortable with those projects. Some of the newer stuff we've seen are projects that are sort of focused on a multi-chain world. So we have Cactus, which is a project focused on integration and interoperation, which basically is about connecting different blockchains, but in maybe a different approach than a lot of the solutions out there today. And I think I'll summarize it by saying that the maintainers of Cactus want it to be an SDK of SDKs and not a blockchain of blockchains, which is sort of how a lot of the interoperability and atomic swap protocols work today. So that's Cactus. And there's also Firefly. So Firefly wants to build they are building what they call a supernode, which is essentially a middleware stack that allows you to write code once and run it on any blockchain that they support, which is really cool. And that can save a lot of development. If you're trying to spin up a blockchain application and you want to run it on a lot of different chains, then Firefly is a great option for that. So we're really seeing, sort of people who are really embracing a multi-chain world. And that's, even big enterprises are on board with this.
When you guys imagine and think about a multi-chain world, and maybe some people think about it differently, is that mostly in a streamlining, logistical, workflow type of, fix or mentality with blockchain? Or is it maybe more social, more interactivity with audiences or with members? Like, do you see this? I guess the best way to explain it is more geared in a private sector sense or in a public sector sense or socially with the public or intercompany?
Well, sort of everything.
Okay.
So I like to view like blockchain and distributed ledger as, sort of a fancy database, right? Well, what is a blockchain? It's a database with decentralized trust, right? You can think of sort of like Bitcoin very abstractly as, a public decentralized database for, a currency. You can think of Ethereum as sort of the same way for programs, right? And then you can think of, permissioned blockchains or semi-permissioned blockchains, right? Is less decentralized than fully public chains, but say more decentralized than something like a traditional database, right? And so there's this huge continuum of fully decentralized to fully centralized, right? And that's great. We have that, but unfortunately, you're probably familiar with what people have termed the blockchain trilemma, and I view this as mostly a trade-off between performance and centralization, right? Uh, you know, Inherently, as you go to more decentralization, you typically struggle more with performance, and so sort of for a lot of use cases, finding the right place on the continuum for your use case is important, right? There are some things where you may want a fully public chain. There are some cases where one party hosting a database is good enough, and there are a lot of cases in between too, right? So our premise is that there's not going to be one blockchain or distributed ledger or database for every single application, and all of these things are still going to have to talk to each other, right? So we need to make sure that we have the software infrastructure in place for all of these, I guess, generalized databases or ledgers to talk to each other and to work together, right? If you want to write code for this ecosystem, you don't want to have to do it separately, and start from scratch every time you want to move to a new system. So,
Do you see a lot of developments mostly around EVM and Ethereum? Or do you see, because I know there's a lot of interoperability and interchain stuff trying to be built. You see a lot of focus around that still in terms of building out applications and processes and solutions, or are you seeing it more on other blockchains that have cropped up in popularity in the last couple of years?
well, I mean, we're seeing a lot of everything. There's
Okay.
definitely a lot of EVM interest, right?
Hmm.
You can with Besu, you can take essentially a core EVM and you can run a permission blockchain on it, right? And that's super nice if you want to do a hybrid blockchain, right? Because well, everything is EVM compatible, and you can sort of switch your code relatively seamlessly. We've also seen interest in other things as well. Um, you know, so I think I don't know that any sort of execution engine is is I don't see a route to a single execution engine. I guess if that's the question.
Sure.
Certainly EVM is the most popular.
Hmm.
I don't anticipate that changing in the near future. But there are reasons why you might want to have a more restricted execution engine, right? You might want something not Turing complete in some cases where you absolutely have to have top performance or security, right? So even then, it's a question of, does that really fit all use cases?
Gotcha. That makes sense. Um, I know a huge key component of the foundation, a lot of it is development too, but also education. What are some of the ways that you guys are reaching out and helping the public get more educated and understand not just what you guys are doing under Hyperledger, but also, across blockchain as an industry and kind of teaching people more about what there is and what you can do?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. So we do have a bunch of courses, you can take on all of our blockchain technologies for people interested in learning more. We have a learning materials group. We have a bunch of ways that we can onboard people and help people who want to learn more. But yeah, I mean, I think education is a tricky thing in general. Blockchain is so new. I know people have written some textbooks on it recently, but it's not an established thing. There's not sort of a standard way to teach it. If you say you've learned about blockchain, I don't know
Yeah.
exactly what you're going to know. And for general knowledge, I usually refer people to the Stanford blockchain course, because I think that's very well put together and taught.
Have you guys thought about putting together a more concrete course or curriculum or something like that? I know it's difficult because, the space is evolving every single day and it's a headache, and there's so many takes on the space, and it's a baby. It's growing like crazy, but it's still young.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have thought about that, and we're trying to do something actually. We are discussing sort of what the best, how to make that the most useful, I guess, is the general question. So, and when you get people coming to blockchain, they're coming with a huge range of experiences and backgrounds. I mean, it's difficult to sort of have one set of content that's useful for everyone.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to have something for like continued education, or for employees or employers to give employees that maybe need them to be more caught up on the industry or on certain topics, or maybe something for developers. I think there's a good angle there.
Yeah, and definitely, and even there's some aspects that they're also critically important, right? If you're developing blockchain, you also need to have a reasonable background in cryptography and security, which if you're just a general software developer, you probably don't have that. A lot of the development is done in secure languages, or I wouldn't say secure languages, but safer languages like Go and Rust. And a lot of people don't have that experience. It's not typically something that's taught at the university level, so most people have sort of learned it on the fly. And it's a challenge to sort of move people over to that. Yeah, there's definitely a big educational aspect.
Totally agree. Yeah, totally agree. I feel like there's a number of different ways you could take it, and it's still something in the space that's kind of lacking, is
Absolutely.
like official education, whether it's through a university or through a foundation like your guys's, or elsewhere. There's so many takes on everything and so many things changing. It's, I imagine, got to be difficult to do, but there's a hole to fill.
Yeah. And we have, I think, quite good stuff for our particular projects. But, certainly for like more general blockchain education, that's a challenge.
Oh yeah, that's a big challenge for sure. If someone wanted to become a member of the foundation and get involved and contribute, what's the path like for them to do that if they wanted to be more a part of Hyperledger?
Well, to be a contributor, I mean, you just show up and contribute. So for technical contributions, right, we place no restrictions whatsoever. Anyone can show up, anyone can contribute. All of our meetings are almost all of our meetings are completely open. The exceptions being like, personal budgetary stuff, and some of our security, stuff is private. Just, for bug disclosure purposes and stuff like that. But
Sure.
Basically everything is open. Anyone can join. You can join our Discord. You can join our mailing list. You can show up to our meetings. So getting involved at a technical level is extremely easy. There are no requirements. You don't have to work for a particular company. You don't have to be a Hyperledger member. You can just show up and contribute. And that's one of the best parts about, truly open development is, anyone can participate from a technical point of view. And, if you do a good job, anyone can be, promoted to leadership positions for these projects. you can, drive the roadmap. You can't expect to, join right away and have people, listen to you on the roadmap, right?
Mhm.
Necessarily. But, if you're a good contributor, you'll eventually be promoted. So from a technical perspective, it's totally open. Our members typically join, we do have members, right? The Linux Foundation and Hyperledger are membership organizations. But members join for sort of the reasons of marketing, where, we help members market and community. So there are some, member networking opportunities and member marketing opportunities. But that's, strictly on the business side, not the technical contribution side.
Got it. So you got kind of two different angles for people, how they can get more involved.
Absolutely.
What about upcoming events or functions or things that you guys are doing or participating in? Anything people should know about? I know you guys got at least one up on the website, front and center.
Yeah, definitely. So we have our annual global forum coming up in Dublin in early September. This is a great way to meet the community and to see a lot of different talks on what people have been doing with Hyperledger, where the project is heading technically. I think these are great events, just to meet people and talk to people about things. And I've gotten, personally great utility out of them. For instance, I was one of the people in my past job at Fujitsu who started the Hyperledger Cactus project. And Cactus was sort of conceived at a member summit event and then sort of finalized at actually the last in-person global forum, which was in Arizona right before COVID hit. It was March 2020, and very ironically, we had a party at the Corona Ranch. It was a small miracle no one caught COVID.
Interesting. No, it's a miracle if anyone doesn't catch COVID these days, because it flies around like crazy. But yeah. Do you guys have more events coming up in the near future where people could participate or get involved?
Yeah, we frequently have, the Global Forum is sort of the big event, but we frequently have hackfests or meetups. I think we have a meetup community with something like 80,000 members. And we cover, most major cities. There's so many places that I couldn't even go into it. So, I definitely encourage people, if they're interested, to look into that as well. We frequently run workshops, about different projects as well. So there's always a stream of events, and I would just watch the website for anything like local or any sort of topic that you might be interested in.
Do you guys mostly do stuff local in the US, or do you travel internationally sometimes?
We do stuff pretty much all over the world.
Okay.
So there are certainly local meetups that are, we have a map of this, and it is really all over the world. And some of our biggest meetup communities are actually not in the US. Like, we have huge meetup communities in Brazil. We have some big ones in India. Obviously a lot of stuff in Europe, stuff in Asia. So it's really all over the place.
Got it. Where can people go to join the community and learn more about Hyperledger and participate if they want to?
Great question. So I guess it depends on, what you're comfortable with and how you want to get involved. If you want to ask, if you're already familiar and you want to ask people questions, Discord is great. We have generally lots of people hanging out in Discord, and they can answer your questions about various projects. If you're a developer, you can just dive right into the GitHub and start looking at things. It's usually pretty well documented. And we also, we have a full wiki with sort of, high-level descriptions of things, information about sort of architectures and how things work. Also on our website, we have documentation of use cases and, success stories and sort of what people are doing with Hyperledger. So if you want to get in from a business perspective, that's probably the way to go there. So it really depends. It's a custom experience for whoever's looking to get involved and how they want to do it. So yeah, I would
Awesome.
recommend poking around and then joining the Discord.
What about yourself? If someone wants to link up with you online or chat with you, are you on social media?
Um, I tend to use social media as little as possible. Um, but I'm always open to email, and I usually am on the Discord. So you can find me on the Discord or email me typically.
Cool. Discord's good. Guys, go check out the Discord if you want to talk to Hart. Go check out Hyperledger. Learn more about it, guys. It's a fantastic what they're doing. Make sure to like the video and subscribe as well if you haven't already. Hart, thank you for taking the time to come on the show and really explain more about what you guys are doing and the progress that Hyperledger has made over the years and over time that it's been doing all this stuff, and it's very exciting. And always look forward to what you guys are working on next. You guys got so many projects, so many different angles and directions that you're going, and it's very cool to see.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your time, Brandon.
You too. Likewise. Talk soon. Meantime, have a good time. Bye.
Bye-bye.